Coming up on episode 71 of Omnivore, how demographic and lifestyle shifts are redefining what and how Americans eat, and how CRISPR gene editing could change the crops we grow and the foods we choose. This is Omnivore, from the editors of Food Technology Magazine and the Institute of Food Technologists.
This episode of Omnivore is sponsored by CoDeveloper from IFT. CoDeveloper is the first AI-powered co-scientist built by food scientists for food scientists and leverages IFT's 85-plus years of scientific excellence, accelerating your R&D processes and helping solve your toughest challenges. Learn more and book your free demo at codeveloper.ift.org.
Welcome to Omnivore from IFT and Food Technology, where we explore the intersection of business, science, and technology in the global food system. I'm Bill McDowell. America's mainstream consumer doesn't look so mainstream anymore. From aging baby boomers seeking functional nutrition to multicultural Gen Zers hungry for new taste experiences, plus a surge in single-person households demanding convenience, the very definition of mass market is changing rapidly. These shifts are driving the next wave of product innovation and reshaping how developers think about flavor, function, and the food experience itself. Executive editor Mary Ellen Kuhn spoke with food technology's resident trend expert Liz Sloan about how evolving demographics are creating a new mainstream market and what it means for the future of food and beverage innovation.
Let's start with the big picture. What are the most significant demographic shifts reshaping today's food and beverage marketplace?
Great question. I think the most important demographic shift of all is the very large and aging population. If we look at those over 65, it's almost hard to believe, but they're the fastest growing age sector of the population. It's going to make a lot of opportunity. At the other end of the spectrum, we have fewer kids. As a matter of fact, 1 out of 5 states in the United States have more seniors than they have kids right now. And speaking of the younger generation, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, half of them are multicultural, which is going to be fascinating for food product developers. On the other hand, since COVID, our at-home workers, whether full or part-time, continue to increase in number, and there's now 36 million of them, and they're spinning off a lot of very interesting trends. Our households continue to get smaller. 29% of all households in the United States are someone living alone, and the average size has shrunk to 2.7 members per household, and that says a lot for packaging, etc. And lastly, I think we just can expect more cost-conscious consumers. Over the past few years, the number of 1,000 plus income households has not gone up a nickel. So I think it's different, but it's a little bit the same.
So many interesting demographic nuggets. Would you say that any of these demographic trends you identified took you by surprise?
Oh, yeah. I think the one that really took me by surprise was the number of older adults. And actually, in 2024, the 124 million people over age 50. And what's equally startling is that half, 63 million of them, are over age 65. And that's a market with a lot of opportunity. The other thing I find very interesting, I think there's 2 new opportunities kind of coming into the spotlight. And one of them are city dwellers. There are 265 million people living in cities. And why is that important? Because their eating habits and the things they buy are really quite different. For example, they buy a lot more specialty foods. They buy really significant more frozen foods. They eat more fish and seafood than regular consumers. They buy more prepared fresh foods and deli foods. They tend to, it's more likely they're vegetarian. And so there's a lot going on there that marketers could could target.
Your article in Food Tech talked about the rise of a new mainstream market. So, how was that different from what we've traditionally considered the American mainstream market?
I think there's some pretty significant shifts. First of all, I think the biggest shift is going to be the shift to ready-made. More fully prepared foods are popping up everywhere. Look at the major food kit suppliers. What are they doing? They're all going to fully cooked eat dinners or oven ready dinners in little trays to put in. Look at the restaurant business. 79% of sales in the restaurant business last year went to takeout. That's enormous. If that doesn't say we want our food to help more prepared for us, I don't think anything does. I think we're seeing a sweeping change, the demand for restaurant style, or to use the term everyday gourmet, although not quite gourmet, but fancier and more fun, really coming in to be a major factor in a sense of entertaining while you're eating. I think the whole globally inspired thing is really going to kick up. We're seeing it already more exotic cuisines coming in, and obviously the more common ones are falling away. Shortcuts is going to be the name of the game. It really is a time thing, whether you're cooking gourmet or ethnic foods or trying to, in my case, any kind of shortcut is becoming very well received. Multifunctional ingredients, blends versus, one spice or sauce. It's more cost effective too. My favorite is this idea of the products really lining up with what the recipe is. My favorite lately is if you're making your own pizza at home and you want New York style, you buy New York style cheese for pizzas, and it's getting very specific. How to cook, it's almost like how to cook or make a certain dish by the type of food you're buying. And I think that's really different.
I want to go through the 4 key behavioral trends that you identify in the article. First one is meal prep streamlined, experiences and exploration, sweet comfort, and focused on functional. So, which one of these do you think will have the longest lasting impact on product development?
Well, you're probably going to think this is a strange answer. And you did make me think about this for a long time. Because at first I'm saying, convenience and health and all that. I don't think it's that at all. I really do think it's flavors and the experiences that consumers are looking for. And the more I thought about it, as it's, marketplace in a way is kind of semi-static right now. We have the older group coming in, but 15 years from now, that's not going to be the same. They're going to be passing on. And what product development is going to have to do, and they should really be doing it right now, is how is all this going to work out? We know that our millennials and our Gen Z, their food preferences and their flavor preferences and their eating habits are vastly different. And when do we click over? And when we do, how do we adjust what we're making and we'll continue to grab their attention? And I just think we'll have to learn all the preferences and retool for that group. And that's why I put it as the most important.
So that's something that product developers should be thinking about now.
Right, because it's ever changing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, Korean food is hot, and then, it kind of rolls over. But a lot to be done.
Well, let's go back to those shortcuts. You point out that many consumers are opting for ready-made meals or meals that use prepared components. Is there a sweet spot between convenience and culinary creativity?
That was a fun question. Yes, I think there is. As a matter of fact, I think the sweet spot is time. It's all about saving time and making it easy for me, getting to great food, more exciting food more easily, and you're making everything better. And I think the industry is starting to do that, but they seem to have this fear if it's gourmet or if it's something that's, quite much more challenging that not to do that. The opposite has been proven to be true. They will look for help. I mean, some of the great ideas for convenient things have really started in the specialty market. The thaw and eat waffles as an example. a lot of different trends starting there that have come over, and they had all started with really more high-end foods, so, and calling foods New York style pizza and everything like that, putting that together to give it a little more glamour and ease.
Okay, well, let's talk snacking. Snacking seems to be overtaking traditional meal occasions for many people. How are consumers redefining what a snack could be? And is there a way that you would suggest product formulators respond to this trend?
This is an amazing time, I think, in the snacking business. Who'd have thought that 50% of consumers buy snacks to make a meal out of them? That's an incredible shift. Now, it's still not as high as 6 and 10, so slightly more are buying snacks because they believe they're good for them. And second, for a more exciting experience. So if we wrap all those three things together, we have something to work with. But it's clear that a lot of the meal snacks are taking on what I would just say are the criteria for meals, right? That they're filling, that they taste good, they're made from real foods. And you've already seen the shift underway. And Circana has been tracking it beautifully, as a matter of fact, in their yearly snack reports. And for example, right now, pizza and all the interesting kinds of pizzas, Alfredo pizzas, everything, fries and onion rings, whether they're from fast food or whether they're pulling them out of their freezer and popping them in the microwave, but in the toaster oven. But there are now microwavable French fries that are pretty good. Indulgent soups, ready to drink coffee, cottage cheese, you just mentioning that to me before, and eggs are all gaining as the top foods moving into the snack market or to be used as snacks. On the other hand, the ones that are really driving the snack market also have a lot of meal qualities, meaning like easy and filling and all of that. And that's yogurt. These that are driving the snack business this past year. Dried meat snacks, cheese cubes. Here they come. Look at this. Frozen handheld entrees are moving into the mainstream snack market. Bars, we knew they're healthy bars, nutrition bars. Appetizers, produce snacks, dessert cups are all driving snack volume growth.
So let's also talk about functional foods, and they've evolved from performance nutrition to mental and emotional wellness. How are today's consumers thinking differently about functional foods?
The younger consumers are much more focused on mental health benefits, such as right now it's all about mood. It was a little bit about relaxation, and mental energy is coming up really, really strong. And that's kind of the area that they've been paying attention to for the last couple of years. And their top functional food benefits are satiety, which you will not see among the older list of consumers. The older group is kind of predictable, right? They're more interested in their physical health. So heart, bone, blood sugar control has come up very strong, and joint flexibility are in the top 5. And then, of course, weight, digestion, and immunity is here. The only other place immunity really pops up are in younger households with kids.
Kind of in a related vein, weight loss medications. As we all know, that's been such big news in the past year or so. So including GLP-1 drugs and also clean eating, they're both influencing behavior. Do you see these forces intersecting at all in product innovation?
I, for one, have been a naysayer against that. GLP-1s and all these medications are a really good idea for the food industry. And I won't go through all the litany of it, but people do not stay on them very long. They're still really restricted in terms of cost. They make you feel for the most part, just awful. But all that aside, I've been doing this for a lot of years. Unless a trend gets up to have about 20%, 18 to 20% participation by consumers, the chances of it going to be a mass market have proven to be 100% non-existent. You just have to get this mass going, and it has to be a very positive reaction to the trend. Now, last year, if we believe the numbers, because they are self-reported, 7% claim to have used a GLP-1 inhibitor. I think, on the other hand, there's two really big ideas. First of all, in contrast, protein, 55% of global consumers all over the world are looking for higher protein products. So I would think that would be, for example, a much higher priority. Secondly, consumers are still following eating pattern diets and eating trends. It has not gone down since last year. It's very strong. 55% of consumers are following something. It could be low carb. A lot of the heart healthy is coming back. And they're buying products for that support that. I think clean eating is definitely here to stay. I think it can be called anything, packaged anything, organic, natural, anything. It's here. But again, that's all going to depend on affordability. So it's very strong. It's not compared to some of the weight loss medications. It's a tried and true effort. And it's exactly to what consumers have spoken to for the last 10 years. That's what they want, cleaner food.
Liz, thank you so much for breaking out all those trends. As always, it was a lot of great insights and very much appreciated.
Contributing editor Liz Sloan is a food scientist and trends expert. You'll find more of her insights on emerging U.S. demographic trends and their impact on innovation in the November issue of Food Technology. We'll be back with more Omnivore in a moment. But first, this word from our sponsor.
Meet CoDeveloper, the AI-powered co-scientist from IFT that cuts development time without sacrificing scientific rigor. CoDeveloper delivers science-backed considerations directly into your R&D processes and connects you with nearly a century of peer-reviewed research and published content to help address your biggest challenges. Visit us at codeveloper.ift.org to book a free 30-minute personalized demo and learn more about what CoDeveloper can do for you.
Welcome back to Omnivore. I'm Bill McDowell. As consumers rethink what they eat, scientists are rethinking how food is grown. Few ag tech innovations promise more impact or invite more curiosity than CRISPR gene editing. One of the pioneers is Pairwise, a North Carolina company using this technology to create crops that are easier to grow and easier to eat. Its first product, a mild, nutrient-dense mustard green, was the first CRISPR-edited food product in the United States. I spoke with Pairwise co-founder and CEO Tom Adams about what sets CRISPR apart from earlier biotech tools, how partnerships are bringing these foods to market, and what it all means for the future of agriculture. Tom, thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Nice to be here, Bill.
So for listeners who may not be familiar with Pairwise, give us the quick story. What problem were you trying to solve when you and your co-founders launched the company? And then specifically related to food and agriculture, what makes CRISPR so transformative compared with earlier biotech tools?
Yeah, I think the easy way to think about the problem we're trying to solve is kind of our mission, which is to make crops easier to grow and easier to eat. There's lots of challenge producing enough food for all the people in the world. Then we also have challenges eating enough of the healthy food. That number of people who eat the amounts of fruits and vegetables we're supposed to eat is not very high. And we thought there's some opportunity to try to take away some of the barriers that people have for eating fruits and vegetables. With regard to CRISPR, it's really it's kind of a game changer because it allows us to do really conventional breeding kind of really souped up. It allows us to take variation that we know about from studying crops and bring it together to bring the right sets of genes together much more quickly than a breeder can do, because we can take the randomness out of it by making the specific changes. So we can study a crop, understand that these variants cause higher yield or different flavor, and then go in and make that modification in a variety that maybe is already really disease resistant, but now you can bring those traits together really quickly. So it's just a souped up version of breeding.
The first product that came out of Pairwise was a branded CPG product, the Conscious Greens mustard greens. What did that experience teach you about the science to market journey? And what did that learning process clarify in terms of where you feel that Pairwise can make the biggest impact?
And one of the hypotheses we had in that, that line about making crops easier to grow and easier to eat is that if consumers buy products, they don't buy technology. And that if you really want to make technology be acceptable, you need to create products that people can identify and that can see the benefits. And I think we were really able to prove that with Conscious Greens because we created a highly nutrient dense leafy green. And we basically validated that you put that in front of consumers and you be transparent and share with them how you made it. And the technology is not a scary thing to them because they see a tasty salad and they eat it and they like it. So we had really, really great feedback from consumers. And, we really believe in giving consumers choice and letting them make the decision themselves. So again, being transparent about the fact that we have used technology in creating it. So that was a great, validation of a hypothesis we had. I can look at it in a positive sense also as a validation of a hypothesis is that it's very hard to be the marketer and the technology company. And I think we helped to validate that if you're going to create a platform that can be used across all of the crops and all of the challenges that we have in agriculture, like we've done with what we call the Fulcrum platform, it's hard to also be the company that's going to be marketing all those products. So it really helped to validate again. I think that the best way to make a biggest impact is to work with partners that have really strong distribution channels and know how to do all that marketing component while we do what we're good at and modify the crops.
So how has that changed the way that you're approaching your partnerships and the role that Pairwise is going to play in the process?
It really drove home this point that we can make a hitless cherry, but it would be better to do that with a partner that already has the network for selling the genetics to parties than to try to do it by ourselves and then remake the whole cherry industry by ourselves. So I think it really drove home the importance of partnership. And we already were partners with Bayer and Corteva in the big acre crop space because we had sort of started with that belief, but I think it really drove home in the produce space as well, that each one of these crops, the path to market is very different and very sophisticated, and being able to have partners that really have already solved those problems is the best way again to make a really big impact.
You also announced recently that you're partnering with Mars to help address the issue of climate-resistant cocoa. Collectively, how do you feel like these partnerships change what's possible for Pairwise and really for the technology in general in terms of being able to scale up?
Yeah, I think Mars is another example where it's great to see a company that's trying to ensure the supply of their raw materials. Traditionally those companies have tended to just count on the raw materials being there and just look for ways to get them. So it's great to see them taking that initiative. And similar to what I was saying, they have a network of partners already that are developing different germplasm, et cetera. And for us to be able to work with them and provide some of our expertise to help them do editing to make some of the changes that they're really interested in, I think particularly concerns around disease and being able to overcome some of the disease problems that cacao is having. I think it's great. And, I like chocolate. I assume most of us do. And I think anything we can do to help make sure that we have a continuing supply of chocolate into the future is a great thing.
So we should make note of congratulations. The MIT Technology Review just named Pairwise as one of its climate tech companies to watch. They cited your work with the Gates Foundation on high yield yams in Nigeria. So that's a very different type of product in the sense that this really is addressing a food security issue as opposed to a consumer product issue or a consumer quality issue. Talk a little bit about what excites you the most about that collaboration and how you feel like CRISPR can make a difference with smallholder farmers that are facing climate stress.
Yeah, think this first. It was a really nice recognition, and I'm really honored to have that show up for Pairwise. I think it was it's nice to be seeing that some validation that the technology and the opportunities to address some of the challenges of climate, et cetera, are real, and that we can do that using the technology we have. And that's kind of the idea with this the YAM project that you bring up. It's not something that Pairwise is going to make big dollars from, but we can do it. And there are parties that have set up to work on YAM. So the Tropical Research Organization and Gates Foundation funding it, and we're able to work with them and help them to do the editing components to change the way that yams are grown. And there's a lot to that project. I won't go into the whole thing, but currently the yams are very, very labor. It's a very important part of the food supply, and they're very labor intensive to harvest. So what they'd really like to do is change the architecture a little bit and get it more consistent, so you could make it easier to harvest the crop, which gives people time to do other things with their lives besides just working on getting enough food for that evening.
There's some of the other crops that you're working on that have similar implications in terms of extending yield, drought resistance, things like that.
We're really excited about a product that we'll be launching in the next year or two, where we've taken blackberries and we've changed their architecture so they're more compact, but they essentially make just as many berries on a plant as a big plant, but they're all much more compact, which allows you to plant the berries, the plants much more densely. So we're actually planting them about 3 times as dense as you would normally plant them. I'll cross my fingers about it because we're still getting the data in, but it's certainly more than 50% increase in yield and probably close to 100%. So quite exciting. And what's exciting is it doesn't take any more inputs. In fact, maybe even a little bit less. So, not only is it making the land more productive, it's not using as much water to create as many berries, for instance, as you would if you had to grow it on 1 acre had to be on 2 acres. So it's pretty impactful.
Philosophically, does this kind of work change how you think about Pairwise's mission at all, or how you define success?
What we've done is make it easier for a producer to produce more berries with less input. So that's what we mean when we say easier to grow. And I think this is it's a real transformative opportunity. And what's kind of cool, there's a lot of relationships between different plants. So we've started doing some of the same things in cherries and other berries and things. And cherries, they take years to put together an orchard, but we have trees now that are producing cherries within about 18 months of planting them, because we've changed the cycle and the requirements for starting to flower. So you could start establishing orchards much more quickly, kind of even have a dream of making a cherry tree into more of a bush so that you could grow them in more environments, because it's difficult to grow cherries any place that it rains in the summer because the cherries end up splitting. So if you could make them smaller and grow them under hoop houses like they do with blueberries and things, you could grow them in many more environments. And
so extend that out a little bit. What other kinds of traits or crops do you anticipate seeing next from CRISPR, either from Pairwise or just across the broader food system?
We just announced a partnership with Sunworld to create a pitless cherry, which I think everybody can identify with, how that would be kind of nice to be able to eat cherries like we do what would now become standard to eat a seedless grape rather than seeded grape. So I think that's that kind of change is certainly in the wind. Also excited about some of the things we have in our partnership with Bayer and starting to develop with Corteva, where we have higher yielding varieties of corn that and soybeans that are resistant to some of the diseases that are big plagues that can allow big reductions in fungicide use, et cetera. And I think that's this is just the beginning. As I said, you can move with what we've learned in berries into cherries, and actually some of the very same things that we've done in berries and cherries is what we're working on with yam. So there's a lot of conservation of pathways across crops. So, if we make a pitless cherry, then why stop there? Why not make a pitless mango or a pitless avocado? There's lots of places where you can imagine how that could really help the consumer. And with avocados, you're shipping pits all over the place that just go in the garbage. If you didn't have the pit, you'd have a big savings in shipping costs too.
So, Tom, if we were having the same conversation 10 years from now, what would success look like to you for the company, for the technology, for agriculture in general?
Yeah, I think, 10 years, that's not that long a time, but I'll be poetic and maybe go a little bit longer. But I think, it's going to make a difference and impact at every level in the food chain. So, for consumers, we'll have year-round access to more convenient, healthy produce that have less barriers to eating. And, I think that's a really exciting thing. For growers, being able to produce more with less inputs and more resilience to some of the climate challenges that we have. That, the problem with climate change is it's not one direction, it's actually climate variability, and that being able to help, again, put a cherry tree under a hoop house so that you don't have to worry if it happens to rain this summer, because you can't really predict which year it's going to rain, gives you lots more peace of mind if you're the producer of cherries. So I think that's, it's really, whether it's 10 years or 20 years, I think you're going to see lots and lots of innovation across the whole food chain.
Tom Adams is co-founder and CEO of Pairwise. Our extended conversation covering CRISPR innovation, global food security, and the future of consumer-focused agriculture appears in the November issue of Food Technology.
Thank you to our sponsor for this episode, CoDeveloper, your AI-powered co-scientist from IFT. To experience CoDeveloper's game-changing R&D capabilities for yourself, visit us online at codeveloper.ift.org and book your custom demo today.
And that wraps up this episode of Omnivore. Thanks again to all our guests and my colleagues at Food Technology. Omnivore is produced and distributed by the Institute of Food Technologists. If you enjoyed today's show and want to learn more about Food Technology Magazine or how to join the conversation by becoming an IFT member, visit ift.org/membership. For more in-depth discussion about innovation in the science of food, check out IFT's other podcast, Side Dish, on the News and Publications page of ift.org. If you have comments or suggestions for future shows, just send us an email. The address is editors@ift.org. For the entire team at Food Technology and IFT, I'm Bill McDowell. Thanks for listening, and join us again for our next episode.